It's a state where centuries of American history are etched in the land. From remains of a mysterious serpent mound to a majestic river crossed by thousands seeking freedom from slavery. Ohio. It may just be a stopping-off point for some on their long migrations, but it's also home to many who've played big roles in America's history. From two brothers whose dreams of flight made Ohio the birthplace of aviation, to a young boy whose fascination with the stars propelled him to the moon, and a talented young runner who broke through the racial divide, managing to beat Hitler and win Olympic gold. Ohio is a powerhouse of industry, once home to the rubber capital of the world. Here on the shores of one of America's Great Lakes, loyalty to hometown heroes is fierce. When one local sports hero abandoned his fans, he was labeled a traitor for life. It's a place where rock and roll icons enter the Hall of Fame, and where a monument to a great naval victory towers over the land. It's easy to see why this northern state is called the heart of it all. This is Ohio. When October arrives in southern Ohio, migrating birds take to the air and head south. Over Hocking Hills, one of the state's most majestic landscapes. Sandstone cliffs and remote ravines hide beneath the sugar maples, sycamores, and butternut trees. Here, autumn takes center stage, blanketing the hills in red, green, and gold. But on this October day, another annual spectacle is giving nature a run for its money. It's homecoming week at Ohio University in the town of Athens. Students and alumni line the streets to celebrate a tradition that goes back 90 years. A parade is the main event, with colorful floats, handmade banners, and costumed dancers. They wind their way through Athens streets before stopping to perform for a panel of judges. Every year, one group of performers is particularly impressive, especially from the air. The Ohio University Band, known as the Marching 110, who call themselves the most exciting band in the land. They're already legendary far beyond Athens, thanks to their high-energy dance moves and YouTube videos that have gone viral and attracted millions of hits. When the parade is over, the 110 heads down the hill to Peden Stadium, home of the Ohio University Bobcats. They're rehearsing for this afternoon's homecoming game, when the Bobcats will face off with their longtime rival, the Akron Zips. And during halftime, the Marching 110 will keep team spirits soaring with their signature moves, including the Diamond Ohio, a formation that spells out their school name in the shape of a diamond. Their impressive choreography and spirit has won them performances at Carnegie Hall, in presidential inaugural parades, and on Late Night with David Letterman. But Athens is the place they call home. Ohio University has been located here on the banks of the Hocking River since 1804, thanks in part to a deal drafted by President Thomas Jefferson. That deal, called the Northwest Ordinance, helped ensure that new territories, like Ohio, set aside land for universities. It's tempting to wonder what Jefferson would have made of the university's most recent achievement, ranking among America's top party schools. One well-known alumnus was no stranger to that reputation. In 1943, a freshman named Paul Newman joined the Phi Kappa Tau fraternity, but he didn't last here long. One night, he allegedly rolled a beer keg down a hill on campus. When the keg crashed into a car owned by the university president, Newman was expelled. Before becoming a famous actor, Paul Newman then joined the Navy, hoping to become a pilot, but his dream of flight was dashed when he was found to be colorblind. But here in the small town of Wapakoneta, another young man shared Newman's dream of flight, and his journey would soon turn extraordinary. In 1944, a 14-year-old boy named Neil Armstrong and his family moved into this corner house. Gazing out at the night sky from his second-floor bedroom, the young Armstrong fell in love with the idea of flight. He got his pilot's license just 2 years later at the age of 16, even before he could drive. Armstrong flew for the Navy and worked as a test pilot for NASA before becoming an astronaut. On July 16, 1969, he and the rest of the Apollo 11 crew lifted off from Cape Canaveral. It was 4 days later, on July 20th, that Armstrong set foot on the moon. While he inspired millions around the world, people here in Wapakoneta were especially proud of their hometown hero. That same day, Ohio Governor James Rhodes proposed building a museum to honor Armstrong and the state's contribution to spaceflight. Just 3 years later, the Armstrong Air and Space Museum opened its doors. From the air, it looks more like a moon station than a museum. Inside is a Gemini capsule, a moon rock, and a simulator that gives visitors a chance to feel what it's like to land on the moon. After his gravity-defying travels and worldwide fame, Armstrong ultimately chose to come back home to Ohio. He took a job as professor of aerospace engineering at the University of Cincinnati. But he wasn't the first in Ohio to explore the mysteries of the skies. In Adams County, not far from corn and cattle farms, lies an archaeological mystery, an ancient earthwork that snakes across the land, a site known today as Serpent Mound. Spanning over 1,300 feet, this prehistoric formation poses a riddle, one with twists and turns like the serpent itself. Who created it, and why? Early settlers believed it was a shrine, possibly a cemetery, or even a place for human sacrifice. In 1901, a Baptist minister suggested the serpent marked the original location of Eden. Carbon dating suggests it was built around 1070 AD, possibly by the Fort Ancient people, a Native American culture that once thrived here on the land that's now Ohio. Researchers have discovered that features of the mound align with both the winter solstice sunrise and the summer solstice sunset. But the true intentions of its builders remain a mystery. Some believe they were giving earthly form to the constellation Draco, a celestial dragon that winds around the Big Dipper. Ohio's native people may have turned to the skies for guidance, but for sustenance, they relied on the slow-flowing waters of the nearby Ohio River. This river valley was once the home of the Iroquois people, who called the majestic waterway that flowed through their land Ogaiо, or Great River. It was from Ogaio that Ohio got its name. The Ohio flows more than 980 miles, from its start in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to the Mississippi. With its particularly smooth and clear waters, Thomas Jefferson declared it the most beautiful river on earth. But at the time, it lay on the wild frontier and acted as an uneasy border between European settlements to the south and Native Americans to the north. After the Revolutionary War, the new U.S. Congress declared a vast swath of land west of the river as new territory. Today, that land is now the 5 states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. But in the late 1700s, it was known simply as the Northwest Territory. And the first permanent settlement in this new territory was here on the Ohio River, a place called Marietta. It had been carved out of the forest in 1788 by Brigadier General Rufus Putnam and other veterans of the Revolutionary War. After the war, the U.S. government ran out of funds to pay its freedom fighters, so it offered them land instead. When it came time to name their new frontier town, they chose Marietta after Marie Antoinette as a gesture of gratitude for France's support in the war. Marietta soon played a key role in the development of Ohio, since it was the gateway to the rest of the state. Thousands flooded into the area, and Marietta and other new settlements to the west quickly boomed. By 1802, the territories had 45,000 residents combined, and soon its supporters were applying for Ohio statehood. But the question was, how would it enter the Union? As a free state or as a slave state? As delegates raced to write a new constitution, a passionate abolitionist named Ephraim Cutler drafted a veto of slavery to be included in the state's Bill of Rights. He managed to convince enough delegates to get the veto passed by just one vote, which is how Ohio came to be a free state, with slave states just below the border. Over the coming decades, the Ohio River became a symbol of hope for thousands of escaped slaves fleeing the South on the Underground Railroad. They called it the River Jordan, for once they crossed the Ohio from Kentucky or West Virginia, they knew they were on their way to freedom. In the dark of night, slaves and their helpers made the journey across the Ohio River in small boats to houses of refuge, like this one, the Sawyer Curtis House. For the owners of these safe havens and for the slaves themselves, there was great risk. Ohio may have been founded as a free state in 1803, but slave owners from other states still had every right to enter Ohio and seize their escaped slaves. And in 1850, the U.S. Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act that not only required escaped slaves to return to their owners, it also made it a federal crime for anyone to help a slave escape. The powerful stories of the more than 40,000 slaves who arrived in Ohio, risking their lives for a chance at liberty, are documented here in Cincinnati at the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, as well as the stories of those who helped them make their journey to freedom. But escaped slaves weren't the only ones who found a haven here. Cincinnati had already attracted others looking for opportunity, especially German immigrants who settled here in the Over-the-Rhine district. Houses, markets, churches, even breweries look very much as they did in the 19th century. But the city that surrounds it has gone through some extraordinary changes. What began as a little town on the river that catered to soldiers and settlers later exploded into a bustling epicenter of culture and commerce. In 1854, poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow crowned Cincinnati the Queen of the West. The name stuck. To this day, it's called the Queen City. When architects designed the new Great American Tower, they topped it off with what they called its own tiara. When it's not ablaze with the setting sun, Cincinnati Reds fans light it red when their team makes it to the playoffs. Ohio has always prized its sports heroes. But one athlete would not only make his home state proud, he would inspire the world by humiliating Hitler and winning gold. Ohio, no matter what kind of barriers its hometown heroes face, many have found ways to make history by inspiring others along the way. And one man here changed the way the world looked at race by running in one. In the 1930s, Ohio State University here in Columbus was the track and field home of Olympic runner Jesse Owens. Raised in Cleveland, Owens was breaking track records even when he was in junior high. Many colleges tried to recruit him, but he chose to study here at OSU. Owens went on to win 4 gold medals at the Berlin 1936 Olympic Games. A huge upset for Adolf Hitler, who hoped the Games would showcase the supremacy of his Nazi athletes. Owens's achievement was a great victory in the battle for racial equality. Although it would be many years before the Civil Rights Movement, the Buckeye Bullet was ahead of his time and the competition. His Olympic record remained unbroken for 48 years. Today, track students at OSU warm up at the Jesse Owens Memorial Stadium, perhaps with their own Olympic aspirations. Buckeye pride is everywhere across the 1,700-acre campus of Ohio State, from basketball to hockey, baseball to tennis. But at the heart of the campus is one place where Buckeye fans really go nuts. It's here at Ohio Stadium. The horseshoe-shaped bowl is the fourth largest in the nation. More than 36 million fans have warmed these seats since 1922. For the most fanatical Buckeye disciples, Section 39A is the place to be. Known as Block O, fans here behind the south end zone start cheers, put on spectacular card stunts, and keep Buckeyes' spirit high. Especially when Ohio State faces its most rabid rival, the Michigan Wolverines. Known simply as The Game, this face-off has been called the greatest sports rivalry in North America. Despite their success as a top college team, the Buckeyes have had their dramatic ups and downs. In 2010, the team was rocked by Tattoo Gate, when the star quarterback and 4 other players were caught selling Buckeye Championship awards for cash and free tattoos. It ended with player suspensions and the end of Coach Jim Tressel's career. Despite the scandal, bragging rights help keep Buckeye spirits soaring. Their players have won Heisman trophies 7 times. The Heisman Trophy is named after Ohio native John Heisman, who was born north of Columbus in the city of Cleveland in 1869. His legendary impact on the sport lives on today at Cleveland's Browns Stadium on the shores of Lake Erie. Every time a Browns quarterback shouts out, "Hike," to signal the snap, he's using a term that John Heisman invented. Ohio sports fans take their devotion to their teams and players very seriously. In the 1990s, the Browns owner, an advertising executive named Art Modell, announced he was moving the team to Baltimore, in part because Cleveland's existing Browns Stadium was outdated. Enraged fans protested, and the city of Cleveland sued to keep the team in town, arguing that a new publicly funded stadium was already approved. In the end, Modell was allowed to move his players to Maryland, but he had to pay the city $12 million and leave the team's name behind in Cleveland. In 1999, a new Cleveland Browns played their first game here at the new Browns Stadium. And many fans today are just as devoted to the new team as they were to the old one. But not all Ohio sports tales have a happy ending. Cleveland is also the site of one of the most famous betrayals in sports history, which hit fans hard here at the Quicken Loans Arena, also known as the Q. In 2003, the Cleveland Cavaliers struck it big when they scored the NBA Lottery's #1 draft pick. They chose Ohio native LeBron James. James quickly helped turn the struggling team around, leading the Cavaliers to the NBA playoffs in 2006. He became the pride of many Ohio sports fans. But in 2010, James suddenly announced he was leaving the Cavaliers for the Miami Heat. Fans were outraged. Some burned their LeBron James jerseys. The owner of the Cavaliers called the decision a cowardly betrayal. James moved to Miami, but held on to his 35,000 square foot Ohio mansion in his hometown of Akron. It comes complete with a bowling alley, casino, barbershop, and of course, a basketball court. Not to mention plenty of security in case any betrayed fans still hold a grudge. LeBron James first caught the attention of pro basketball scouts here at St. Vincent St. Mary High School in Akron, a city better known as the rubber capital of America. It lies just south of Cleveland. In Greek, Akron means a high point. The town lies on the highest point on the Ohio and Erie Canal, a once bustling waterway that connected Lake Erie in the north with the Ohio River in the south. Fly over Akron today, and giant rubber factories appear in nearly every direction. But Akron's rubber story begins long before cars sped down its streets. According to legend, the city's first rubber king, B.F. Goodrich, launched his business after watching a friend's house burn to the ground when the firefighters' old hoses failed in the cold. Goodrich opened his plant here in 1871, first making rubber fire hoses and bicycle tires. By 1888, he was developing new inflatable tires for bicycles, and later for cars. Thanks to its specialized labor force, more rubber companies opened their doors here, and Akron became the rubber capital of America. Akron streets bustled as the rubber industry boomed. In the early 20th century, it was at one point the fastest growing city in the nation. Actor Clark Gable even worked here at the Firestone plant, a brief pit stop on his road to Hollywood. It was an actor friend at the factory who first invited Clark to see a play, and the young man became hooked on the idea of acting. But by the 1970s, radial tires from Europe were all the rage, and business began to falter. In just 15 years, most of the big tire producers here were bought out by foreign companies. Most of Akron's rubber factories closed for good. The Goodrich tire brand is now owned by Michelin. And Akron's legendary Firestone plant was closed when the company was purchased by Japan's Bridgestone Corporation. Bridgestone still makes race car tires in Akron, but the rest of its manufacturing plants are located around the world. There may not be much rubber left in Akron, but there's one place here where the product that built this city is on proud display, covering an engineering marvel that towers over the Akron International Airport. This rubber-roofed behemoth is known as the Goodyear Air Dock. When it was built in 1929, it was the world's largest structure without interior supports. With nearly 364,000 square feet of floor space, it's big enough to house 8 football fields side by side. And there's a very good reason why it's so big. In the 1930s, the U.S. Navy needed a place to build massive helium-filled airships that could act like flying aircraft carriers. Though some believed these airships, also called dirigibles, represented the future of air travel, they made easy targets for enemy aircraft and didn't fare well in bad weather. Airships never took off like many predicted, but this giant hangar is still in use by an aerospace contractor. The downfall of the dirigible may have put an end to one dream of flight, but it didn't diminish Ohio's lofty place in aviation history, thanks to 2 brothers whose daring first attempts to take to the air would make Ohio the birthplace of aviation. From its astronauts to world-class athletes, Ohio has been the humble home of dreamers who dared to aim high. For one pair of Ohio brothers, it took a little ingenuity, passion, and determination to turn their dream of flight into reality. It all began just about 50 miles north of Cincinnati, in the city of Dayton, a place known today as the birthplace of aviation. It was here that Wilbur and Orville Wright ran a modest bicycle shop and printing press in a brick corner building that still stands downtown today. From their work on bicycles, they already knew control and balance would be critical, so they tested their ideas with unmanned gliders. Although the Wrights had managed to lift off on the beach of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, they hadn't found a way to stay in the air for more than a minute. But that was about to change. the brothers convinced a local farmer to lend them a cow pasture. The owner of this field gave his permission, but on the condition that they clear the runway of livestock before taking off. They also needed a place to store their invention, so they built a simple hangar on the field. A reconstruction of that original building now stands at the site. After many attempts, the brothers' dreams finally took off. In October 1905, Orville lifted up into the skies in their handmade airplane for their longest flight to date. He managed to circle the field 29 times before finally running out of fuel after staying in the air for a record 39 minutes. What may have excited the Wright brothers the most was knowing that flight offered a chance to see the world from a new perspective, something that their own hard work tinkering with aerodynamics had made possible. "Isn't it astonishing," wrote Orville, "that all these secrets have been preserved for so many years, just so that we could discover them?" 5 years later, the Wright brothers were building the world's first mass-produced airplane, which they named the Model B Flyer. Costing $5,000 in 1910, it was released at about the same time as Henry Ford's Model T. It's believed that 100 of these planes were mass-produced and sold, including some to the U.S. Army, and even one, some say, to the Mexican revolutionary leader, Pancho Villa. Today, aviation buffs fly high over Dayton in this replica of the Model B. Nicknamed the Brown Bird, it's been soaring the skies since 1982. Only a few pilots in the world are qualified to fly it. It's like riding a motorcycle in the sky, except there's almost unlimited visibility. It's built to the exact specifications of the original Model B, as a two-seater with separate controls that allows the pilots to maneuver the plane's pitch, yaw, and roll. But not everything's the same. The Model B Flyer's original spruce frame has been replaced with sturdy but lightweight steel. And instead of landing on wooden skids like the original, this plane touches down on Harley-Davidson tires. After their astounding success, Wilbur and Orville traveled the world, but always came home to Dayton. Orville later lived here at Hawthorne Hill, a mansion with the Wrights' endless flair for clever DIY gadgetry, including a toaster that could slice bread and what was called a circular shower bath. But the Wright brothers knew that success required much more than just new gadgets and technology. As Wilbur put it, what is chiefly needed is skill rather than machinery. And that proved to be the case for a young U.S. naval commander who daringly fought off a foreign attack just off Ohio shores nearly 2 centuries ago. These sandy beaches mark Ohio's northern border on Lake Erie. The waters of this lake may be peaceful today, but in the early 19th century, they were filled with battleships, cannons ablaze, during one of the most important naval battles in United States history. It all happened in the waters off South Bass Island, which now lies just south of the Canadian border. In 1812, war broke out between Britain and the U.S. That same year, British forces captured Detroit. The U.S. Navy feared that Lake Erie could be next. Then, on September 10, 1813, 6 British warships sailed towards South Bass Island. Many feared it was part of a British plan to take complete control over Lake Erie. In response to the threat, 27-year-old United States Navy Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry rushed his fleet into action, here in a place called Put-in Bay. At first, the southwest winds worked against Perry's fleet. The British ships fired heavily on Perry's ship, the USS Lawrence, killing or wounding nearly all of his crew. Desperate and on the verge of defeat, Perry decided to risk it all. In a small skiff and under fire, he rowed to his nearest fighting ship, the Niagara, and climbed on board. Then, Perry and his men sailed the Niagara straight towards the British fleet. The winds changed, and so did Perry's luck. Two British ships became entangled and were unable to maneuver in defense. Almost immediately, the British surrendered. In a span of just 20 minutes, Perry had gone from facing certain death to capturing every British vessel. Lake Erie was now safely in American hands. Today, a memorial to Perry's victory soars 350 feet over the site of the battle. With the British threat removed, Ohio's focus turned to trade. Ohio's farms were already producing corn, wheat, and other grains by the bushel, but getting them to markets was proving to be a challenge. In the early 19th century, the state government commissioned new canals to connect Lake Erie to the Ohio River, helping create a giant transportation network that reached from New York City to the Mississippi River and ultimately New Orleans. In the days before trucks and trains carried goods across the country, canals were the highways of commerce. Farmers, merchants, travelers, and industrial tycoons all relied on these watery routes. Long stretches of Ohio's early canals have fallen into disrepair, but some remain and offer a glimpse of how goods were once transported across the state. To keep the boats and barges moving, mules often pulled them from the shore and could drag barges all the way from Toledo to Cincinnati. In Ohio, the city that benefited most from this network was Cleveland, thanks to a few titans of industry. One of the earliest was John D. Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire, who grew up just outside of town. In 1863, he and a partner built an oil refinery here on what's called the Flats. It was the start of a business that would become the oil giant Standard Oil, parts of which would later go on to become both Chevron and ExxonMobil. Rockefeller's success helped transform this lakeside city into a bustling epicenter of industry. Steel quickly became the city's backbone. By 1880, nearly 30% of Cleveland's residents worked in steel mills south of town. Today, Cleveland's steel plants are still going strong. These are some of the largest plants of their kind in America, and they still rely on the winding Cuyahoga River to ship their goods to market. Today, bulk carriers carefully navigate this narrow waterway, just as ships have been doing for more than a century. But one wrong move of these long, cumbersome carriers can spell disaster. This busy river was once the embarrassment of the city, and may be one of the reasons why Cleveland was once nicknamed the Mistake by the Lake. For years, Standard Oil, Goodyear tires, Sherwin-Williams paints, and Republic Steel all dumped their waste right into the Cuyahoga River. Until one day in 1969, when the river itself caught on fire. While fish populations have risen dramatically in recent years, high levels of contaminants and bacteria still plague this waterway. But it's not just rivers that are being reclaimed in Cleveland. In the city's University Circle district, old buildings are being renovated and new ones built to reflect the changing world around them. This modernist cube, designed by Farshid Mousavi, is the new home for Cleveland's Museum of Contemporary Art, or MoCA. Its black glass panels respond to the changing light and activity on the street below and are meant to help visitors experience and reflect on the passing of time. Even its shape is in flux. MoCA starts off on the ground as a hexagon, but ends up as a square at its roof. Just down the street, another design undulates more like crashing waves. Frank Gehry's Peter B. Lewis Building, home of the Weatherhead School of Management, is one of University Circle's most iconic structures. Here, some existing buildings are being given a modern twist. Cleveland's Museum of Art, which first opened in 1916, is getting a $350 million renovation, which includes a brand new glass-roofed atrium. But in University Circle, cutting-edge design is not only reserved for museums. This glimmering curved facade is home to one of the most innovative medical centers in the world. This is just one of several buildings belonging to the Cleveland Clinic. Oprah Winfrey, Robin Williams, and even William Randolph Hearst have all sought treatment here. But the building that kick-started Cleveland's modern building boom isn't on University Circle. It's right downtown and looks out over the banks of Lake Erie. This is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Nearly 300 legendary artists have been inducted here. And there's a very good reason why this popular site was built in Cleveland. Many believe rock and roll was born right here in town. Not the music, but the moniker. In 1951, a Cleveland DJ named Alan Freed first came up with the phrase rock and roll to describe a new beat-driven kind of music. The hall's glass and steel pyramid was designed by famed architect I.M. Pei, who once admitted he had no idea what rock and roll even was. But after seeing a few concerts, Pei understood what it was all about and decided that the best way to capture the energy of rock and roll was with a pyramid design. Outside, painted replicas of Fender Stratocasters are part of Guitar Mania, an art project that raises money for the United Way of Greater Cleveland and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's educational programs by auctioning off the guitar sculptures. The highest bid yet was for Yoko Ono's Imagine Peace guitar, which brought in $105,000 for charity. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has inducted hundreds of musical talents, from Elvis Presley to Tom Waits to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But there was a time when entertainment legends came to Ohio not to be celebrated here in Cleveland, but to get away from it all and even do chores. Ohio. It's been home to innovators, industrial titans, and record-breaking athletes. But for many out here in rural Ohio, their ventures are best when they're kept small and in the family. Nearly 90% of Ohio's farms are family-owned. Corn and soy are their top crops. Every fall, teams of modern combines and trucks roll out across the state. These highly efficient machines harvest acre after acre of corn and other crops with amazing speed. But not all of Ohio's bounty is harvested the modern way. Take these upright bundles of corn. They've all been cut and stacked by hand. This technique, called corn shocking, allows the stalks to dry without any rot. Hundreds of years old, it's still practiced today by the Amish. Here in Holmes County, they live pretty much as they always have, since they first arrived in Ohio nearly 200 years ago. With close to 60,000 Amish in Ohio, this state has the largest Amish community in the country. The Amish believe that modern technology corrupts, which is why they still drive horse-drawn carriages and wear simple, unadorned clothing. On narrow country roads, their buggies can come in handy to bypass traffic. Since the Amish have cut off many of their ties with the outside world, their way of life has remained a mystery to many. So when the news broke of a shocking Amish scandal, it captivated the nation. It began here in this small valley in 2011. At the time, this was home to an Amish splinter group led by a man named Samuel Mullet, who lived in this white house, surrounded by dozens of his followers. Some said that Mullet's strict Burkholz clan was actually a cult, and that he was known to severely punish those who didn't follow his extreme interpretation of his faith. So when members of his group fled, Mullet was accused of taking revenge. In Amish communities, beards for men and uncut hair for women are treasured symbols of religious devotion, which is why many believe they became Mullet's targets. He was accused of ordering some of his loyal followers to track down those he perceived as his enemies. The gang, now known as the Burkholz Boys, carried out attacks in the dark of night, holding down their victims and then cutting off their beards or hair with scissors and battery-operated clippers. Mullet's own sister was one of those attacked. The FBI raided the settlement, and Mullet and others were arrested. Prosecutors charged him with hate crimes. In 2013, Mullet was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in jail for his role in masterminding the beard-cutting attacks. But there's another twist to this tale. Thanks to the modern technology that the Amish often shun, it's been reported that Mullet is now a multimillionaire and that his property sits on a gold mine of natural gas that fracking companies have paid millions to extract. With its rolling hills and open plains, Ohio offers plenty of places to carve out one's own community, even for celebrities with a cult-like status. Roughly 70 miles northeast of Columbus lies an idyllic spot called Malabar Farm. Here, surrounded by forests and fields, creative minds have found a place to return to nature, surround themselves with the season's natural beauty, and write a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel or two. Author Louis Bromfield lived here at Malabar Farm in the 1940s and 50s. But he was often not alone. Hollywood's biggest stars at the time considered the farm an ideal getaway. Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart were married here in 1945. At the time, it was the tabloid's most sensational story. Errol Flynn, Dorothy Lamour, Clark Gable, and others soon flocked here. But even stars had to work on the farm, thanks to Bromfield's passion for sustainable agriculture. Some locals remember seeing James Cagney selling vegetables at the farm's produce stand. Although the stars have since moved on to other glamorous getaways, Malabar Farm has yet another intriguing link to Hollywood. Hidden in the trees, this small cabin on the property may not look like much, but it's where the powerful opening scene of The Shawshank Redemption was filmed. Starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, the film follows a banker accused of murder, his sometimes brutal imprisonment, and his inspiring friendship with a fellow inmate. Much of the rest of the movie was filmed nearby, at the Ohio State Reformatory. This castle-like facility was built in 1896 and closed in 1990. That's when Hollywood saw an opportunity. The gloomy Romanesque architecture provided the perfect setting for Shawshank. From the moment character Andy Dufresne walks through the prison yard on his way to see the warden, to his brutal stint in solitary confinement, the prison plays the role of the ultimate antagonist. The facility's goal is to break the spirits of all who enter its gates. Yet Andy does not give up hope, and his unflagging faith in freedom encourages those around him who'd long ago been broken. The film's most iconic scene takes place under an oak tree nearby. It's beneath this tree's heavy boughs where Morgan Freeman's character, Red, digs up a buried message and realizes it's time to either get busy living or get busy dying. Severe winds nearly took down the tree in 2011, but true to the film's message of hope and survival, a good part of the oak still stands tall. For now, its most serious threats may come from movie buffs and tourists seeking out this legendary tree. Many fans of the film make a pilgrimage here to see the oak. So many that the tree's owner, a local attorney, felt the need to fence it in. But there's no fencing in the bold spirit of Ohio. From those who dreamed of flight, even making it all the way to the moon. From the brave who dared to take a stand against slavery, to those who fought for freedom when the odds were stacked against them. The innovative, inventive, and inspirational will always be found in Ohio.